And in fact, A-Rod will be in the lineup tonight, batting fourth, playing third base. And we expect to hear from Alex Rodriguez in a few minutes. Now, in a statement for his part, Baseball Commissioner Bud Selig said the suspensions were not only the, quote, right thing to do, but the only thing to do, end quote. What he said was necessary to maintain fairness and integrity in baseball. All right, let's bring in our panel right now and talk about this. Usually we fight about politics here, but we'll play hardball of a different kind.
This is all politics.
Yes, exactly. Journalist and author. Mark Furnish, professor of Brooklyn law, attorney who's argued before the Supreme Court. And Ed Cox, chairman of the New York State Republican Party. I don't know his politics, by the way, but Joe Girardi might be somebody you guys may want to recruit here because he was good at evading the questions. All right, Mark. Let's break down some of the nuts and bolts, and then hopefully we're going to hear from Alex Rodriguez himself. Major League Baseball, after a long investigation, we don't have to go through all of it, but you had some shady characters down in Florida, like they always are shady characters when you're talking about performance-enhancing drugs and vials and dark of night and cash and the intermediaries. It had all the normal subplots, except long, exhaustive investigation, dozen players or so that they literally presented them with a deal.
Right.
Take our deal here, 50 games, your year's over, you start next year, you're going to lose your paycheck for the balance of the year. And Braun, obviously the biggest star here, was the first player to take the deal on the Brewers, and everybody else followed suit with the exception of Alex Rodriguez. We know what the MLB offer, or at least the final offer was, but they had two choices. Explain to our audience how the commissioner could have basically done integrity for the game, bad for baseball, or gone the route that he chose, which was to say that there was an abuse of our stated policy. I'll use my discretion to make your punishment more than everyone else's.
Well, there's a separate provision, actually a side agreement and an addendum to the collective bargaining agreement that deals specifically with the drug-related allegations. And, you know, there's an aura of secrecy about this because baseball, quite rightly, hasn't really said exactly what he's alleged to have done. So we can't determine really whether, I mean, it sounds on its face, 211 games, whoa, that's a whopping amount, unprecedented. We don't really know what the allegations are. I mean, we've heard a lot of rumors and innuendo that he obstructed justice. And frankly, from what I understand, the obstruction of justice element of this, that sanction has been imposed under the basic collective bargaining agreement between the union and MLB, Major League Baseball.
But to put it, Mark, in user-friendly terms for the audience, the commissioner could have said, okay, one is you violated the deal. Right. Everybody knows you can't use certain drugs. We got enough tangible evidence or circumstantial whatever to say you were a rampant user. Or the other one is, I, as judge and jury, as the commissioner, are going to say, just like I did with Pete Rose, that you were bad for baseball and I will levy whatever punishment I see fit. Talk about how, if the player doesn't want to go along to get along, what appellate rights they have under both of those scenarios.
Well, I think on the drug scenario, he's bound to follow the side agreement that deals specifically with drugs. The way that I see it, if he truly obstructed the investigation, then I think he could have used his absolute powers to say it's bad for the integrity of the game and tossed him out right away. Now, there's a reason he didn't do that.
One was the players' union, that they'd have to get involved. Now they may sit on the sidelines.
They may sit on the sidelines, but I suppose, and I've read the side agreement, but not the whole massive CBA, the governing collective bargaining agreement. It's my strong suspicion that the CBA says they have an affirmative duty to cooperate in an investigation, and if they don't or if they obstruct it, then he's subject to discipline under that collective bargaining agreement. So that's why I think that they did it that way.
Will we learn? So here's what happens. Also, it gets a little confusing just so everybody knows, well, why is this guy playing if he just got suspended and appealed? Well, under this thing, which is the drug part of it, right? He won't formally be suspended until 3 days. So I think it's the end of Wednesday. And then at that point he says, and he has already said he will appeal it. Then up to 20 days later, he can keep on playing. And then 20 days later, we're going to find out what's going to happen to this guy one way or the other.
Yeah, it's an automatic stay while he appeals. He's allowed to keep playing while he appeals. So we have this whole bizarre spectacle that all the commentators on WFAN and ESPN are railing about. It's really not that bizarre. I mean, he has a right to appeal and have it heard by an arbitrator, and that'll probably take a month. And
so
pretty good for the Yankees for the next month.
He's got $90-something million still due to him, paid through his 40s here, that the Yankees would love to get out from under. If he's suspended for a year, roughly say that's $30 million plus the balance of this year, you can argue and understand why he's fighting to keep it. Yankees would love to get out from under the contract. Major League Baseball would love to make this guy an example. Now I'm going to talk to both of you gentlemen more as fans than anything else. I've heard two arguments from fans. One who say, oh, the hypocrisy of this. Major League Baseball knew that when Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa looked like comic book figures, that they didn't magically all of a sudden grow their head sizes 3 sizes bigger than before. It was good for baseball then. Now all of a sudden they're trying to make an example and they're coming down too hard on A-Rod. The other side, Ed, is that, wait a minute, this guy has been a serial abuser. Not only is he a narcissist and insecure one at that one, but when he got a slap on the wrist, he kept going back to the well, throw the book at him, kick him out of the game forever. As a fan, what would you like to see happen to A-Rod if the allegations are true?
Look, baseball is a national pastime. It can't live with asterisks. You know, fathers and mothers talk to their sons and daughters about players they saw when they were kids and players now, comparing them. And you just can't live with knowing that the records somehow were cooked because of drugs. He admitted to using drugs once. He wasn't punished for that. They have to throw the book at him now. For the good of baseball.
Lifetime? Or do you think the punishment of basically 211 games seems to fit?
That's a lifetime. At 38, that's a lifetime for him, basically.
Still have another 60 million coming. Yeah. What do you think, Dom?
I'm a fan of the game. I think all of us, as the commissioner, as the chairman just indicated, we all want to see a clean, fair game with no drugs involved. But I really feel the commissioner has every right to do what he did, but A-Rod has every right to appeal, and we have to let the chips fall where they may. So if obviously the suspension is not going to stand, the arbitrator.
You know what? The only thing I'd say to that, Dominic, we'll keep this conversation going at the break, is if these were empty charges, the other guys wouldn't have walked away. Some of them are going to free agency. If they thought they could have beat the rap, they would have appealed this thing too.
It's the length of it, not the substance of it. I mean,
so apparently, and again, this is all, as you would say,
it's
circumstantial.
That's what it is.
But apparently, this goes back years. They have so much documentation that he not only used it on multiple occasions, but that he tried to get in the way of the investigation. He tried to have people be not cooperative.
Listen, here's what I would say about that.
But let the arbitrator decide.
Yes,
let the arbitrator rule. You know, not Major League Baseball, not A-Rod. Let someone who's objective look at this.
Look, we rushed to judgment about Roger Clemens and Barry Bonds, and maybe they did what they were alleged to have done, and maybe they didn't. Those cases collapsed because they were built largely upon the word of cooperating witnesses. We don't know anything about this Anthony Bosch, who's the keystone to this investigation.
What we do know of him certainly doesn't make him most credible.
It's always, look, but Major League Baseball has to proceed very cautiously.
In both those cases, in the court of public opinion, and A-Rod's made hundreds of millions of dollars already, and Alex Rodriguez, and Clemens and Bonds too. They never forget about get their reputation back. They're still basically pariahs.
Listen, this is our fault as a society for glorifying these people. Major League Baseball has always been filled with different forms of cheating, going back to the Black Sox, going back to spitballs, going back to pine tar. We're in a much more technologically sophisticated era now. These drugs are much more readily available. I mean, when you watch the NFL and you see these gargantuan linemen any given Sunday, do you think they're naturally built like that? They're huge.
Why do you think, Ed, people care so much when it relates to baseball, more than in football, where somebody gets caught for steroids or in their cycle or growth hormone, they shrug, some defensive lineman comes back 4 games later, nobody even cares. Baseball, though, somebody said it's written in prose, and it's the books, it's the numbers.
It is a national pastime, and for a number of reasons, which you can go through here. You know, anyone can play it, big, small, fast, slow. You know, there's room for anyone who has the talent in different positions and all that. And people can identify with different players on the field. It's a fully integrated game. You know, it has been for a long while in a very balanced way. It really is a national pastime. And that's why you need to be sure. With the Black Sox scandal, well, a new commissioner came in and cleaned it up, and he was tough about it. And that's what's got to be done here.
Well, Fay Vincent was very tough on Pete Rose, and look what happened in the next 20 years.
Oh, in fact, you mentioned Fay Vincent. You wrote a piece in today's Wall Street Journal titled, "Tell the Baseball Druggie, Strike One, You're Out." And I will say, Dominic, and by the way, we're waiting to hear any minute now, Alex Rodriguez address what I would expect would be a very curious press corps as to what happens both today, tonight, the next few days, the next few weeks. But Dominic, it all comes down to the pocketbook, because you can argue for these players that it not only has paid off, but even when they're caught, it pays off. They get the big contract if they cheat, and if they get suspended, they'll be chagrined. But look at Ryan Braun, poster child here. A couple of years ago, he ended up, somehow, some way, getting out of a failed drug test because they said that the sample that was done was compromised. This poor guy who took the sample lost a job here, ruined a life here potentially, and then he comes back the next year and says, yeah, maybe I wasn't telling the truth so much. I'm going to move on.
And you know what happened to the arbiter in that one? He got fired.
Absolutely.
Baseball wants to be tough on this.
So to me, the guy loses $3 million out of this year, but he's still got $150 million coming to him. There has to be a punitive thing where the only thing that matters to these guys, which is the bottom line of the paycheck, makes it prohibitive to do this. And I think this would be a major sign that they're not messing around anymore.
It would be a good sign to the players, to the rest of the players, and to the players coming up.
Let's go now back to Chicago. Alex Rodriguez.